A very useful function that exists in Excel and has for a while, but has never been included in any Excel documentation, is the DATEDIF function. Now the DATEDIF function allows you to calculate the difference between two dates and display them in whatever format you're interested in. So whether you want to display them in days, in months, or in years. Just before we look at the DATEDIF function, I'd like to show you one other function that we're going to use, and that is the function to get today's date. So in the second sheet of your employees working file, which is called today, we can get today's date by doing a keyboard shortcut, which is Control and semicolon. And that places today's date, November the 15th, 2013, in the cell. I press return to accept that. However, that is a static value and will stay at November the 15th, 2013 until I change it. So in 3 weeks' time, it will still say November the 15th, 2013. If, however, for it to change to today's date when we get to tomorrow, I can use a function called today. So that's equals today. Now, just like the other functions you've seen already, it has an open bracket. However, it differs in that it then has a closed bracket with nothing in the brackets. So it's a straightforward function to produce today's date. And when I return, I get the same date, 11/15/2013. The difference between the two cells, though, is that A2 is a function, so we'll always have today's date in there, and A1 is a static value and will always stay as November the 15th. Now we're going to use the today function in our new DATEDIF function. So we go back to the employee sheet, where we can see we have their dates of birth. But we'd like to see their ages. When we talk about humans, we talk about ages. So let's go create ourselves a new column. Insert column, new column heading of age. And then we can calculate people's ages by looking at their date of birth and finding out the difference between when they were born and today in whole years. We only worry about the whole years when we look at human ages. So the function is equals DATEDIF, open brackets. Now you'll notice that because this is not officially a supported Excel function, nothing appears when you open the brackets, whereas when you create any other function, when you open the brackets, it gives you the criteria that are required. Now you have to know the criteria. So the criteria are actually 3 steps. The first part is the oldest date, which is going to be the person's date of birth, which is E2. Then comma. The second part is the second date, so the newest date that you're trying to find a difference between, which in our case is today's date. So we can actually place the function today inside the DATEDIF function, and then comma. So we're actually asking it to find the difference between E2, which is the person's date of birth, and today's date, but we need to tell it which part of the date we are interested in. Well, we're only interested in the year, so we put a little set of speech marks, Y, and another set of speech marks, and then close brackets. Now in this third part, you can actually have D if you want to know the number of days between the two dates, M if you want to know the number of months between the two dates, so that's full months, and you can put YD, which is the days, take away the full years, and MD, which is the days, take away the full months. So it's sort of the remaining days once you take away the months. In our case, we've asked for how many full years are there between E2, Wendy's date of birth, and today. When we press return, it tells us it's February 16, 1900. Now the reason for that is because Excel in its helpful way has actually pre-formatted this cell as a date format. Now we've seen this previously in the formatting, in that the date format already applied to this cell is not what we're after. So we can change that by going up to the quick format option here and just choosing general. And you can see that it tells us that Wendy is 47. I can then replicate this formula to the bottom, double click on the little fill handle, and it then, as all functions are relative, works out the age of each of our employees. So Mary Wallace is 58, Robert Clark is 38. And when we look at the formula, you can see it's moving down relatively to now look at their date of birth. The today function is a fixed function producing today's date, and the Y is a fixed value producing the full number of years. So this is the very useful, although undocumented, DATEDIF function.